Tonight, millions of us will adjust a thermostat and slip between sheets in perfectly climate-controlled bedrooms. But what if that technology vanished? What if you faced the reality of a medieval winter, where your own breath crystallizes in the air inside your house? Most people assume our ancestors simply endured miserable freezing nights. They're wrong. Medieval people developed a complete system of winter sleep survival that was so effective, so ingeniously designed, that it could shame our modern heating bills. They didn't fight the cold with brute force, they outsmarted it. These weren't desperate measures, they were sophisticated thermal engineering techniques perfected over centuries of necessity. While we heat entire houses to keep one person warm, they created precise microclimates that concentrated heat exactly where it mattered most. The medieval bedroom wasn't a sanctuary of comfort, it was a survival chamber. Every piece of furniture, every scrap of fabric, every nightly routine was part of an integrated defense system against the killing cold. You think you understand winter sleeping because you felt chilly and reached for an extra blanket. But you've never faced the enemy they defeated every night. Stone walls that bled heat like open wounds, wind that knifed through gaps and cracks, and the crushing reality that warmth was a finite resource that could mean the difference between waking up and freezing to death. Their solutions were brilliant, and we've forgotten almost every one. The medieval house was not a home, as we understand it. It was a giant heat sink designed to steal warmth from anything living inside it. Picture thick stone walls, 2 feet deep in many castles, that absorbed every degree of heat generated by fire or human bodies. These walls remained perpetually cold, radiating that cold back into living spaces like massive refrigerator coils. The very structure that protected families from raiders became their greatest enemy in winter. Glass was an extreme luxury. Most windows were covered by wooden shutters or oiled linen that blocked wind and snow but provided almost no insulation. Gaps existed everywhere, between floorboards, around door frames, through the spaces where timber met stone. The medieval home leaked heat through thousands of tiny wounds. The single fireplace that dominated each room created a cruel illusion of warmth. Stand within 3 feet of the flames, and you might feel comfortable. Move 6 feet away, and the temperature plummeted. The fire heated bodies, not spaces. Most of its energy escaped straight up the chimney, wasted. At night, the fire would be banked, covered in ash to smolder safely until morning. This provided barely enough heat to keep water from freezing solid, nothing more. The bedroom became a freezing void, where survival depended entirely on what you brought to the battle. Medieval people understood something we've forgotten. You cannot defeat winter by trying to heat an entire space. You must create zones of warmth. You must turn defense into precision. The bedroom was where this precision mattered most. It was where families gathered their most effective weapons against the cold and deployed them with the skill of engineers. Because in a world where winter could kill you in your sleep, the bed itself had to become a fortress. The four-poster bed was not furniture, it was architecture you slept inside. Walk into any medieval bedroom worth surviving in, and you'd find what appeared to be a wooden room built inside the larger stone room. Thick posts rose from each corner, supporting a solid canopy overhead. Heavy curtains hung from every side, not decorative draping, but thick wool barriers that could seal completely shut. These curtains were the key to everything. When drawn, they created a tent within the bedroom, a sealed microclimate that trapped and concentrated body heat. The canopy above caught the warm air that would otherwise rise and dissipate into the frigid room beyond. The curtains blocked every draft that tried to steal heat from sleeping bodies. The wealthy lined these curtains with fur. The practical stuffed them with wool batting. Some were thick enough to muffle sound completely. All served the same crucial function. They turned a freezing bedroom into a heated capsule just large enough for survival. This was thermal engineering disguised as bedroom furniture. The enclosed space could be 20 degrees warmer than the room outside the curtains. Body heat that would normally be lost to the vast cold air of a stone chamber was now trapped in a space barely larger than a modern closet. The science was flawless. Heat rises, so the canopy captured it. Air circulation was controlled, so warmth couldn't escape through convection. The thermal mass was minimal. You were heating a few cubic feet of air, not an entire room. Every principle of efficient heating was built into a structure that looked like elaborate decoration but functioned as a life support system. Even the bed frame itself served the fortress. Raised high off the cold floor on sturdy posts, it lifted sleepers away from the stone or earth that would drain heat from their bodies. The height also allowed the hanging curtains to create a complete seal from ceiling to floor, leaving no gaps for warmth to escape. Medieval people didn't sleep in bedrooms. They slept in survival pods that happened to be built from wood and wool instead of modern materials. The bed wasn't where you rested after a day of medieval life. It was where you won the nightly battle against freezing to death. Privacy was a luxury medieval people couldn't afford when their lives depended on staying warm. The most reliable, renewable heat source available to them wasn't wood, wasn't coal, wasn't any fuel that could be burned. It was each other. Communal sleeping wasn't a sign of poverty or overcrowding. It was brilliant thermal strategy. Entire households, parents, children, servants, and even guests of similar social standing would share sleeping spaces and often the same large bed. The wealthy might have bigger beds, but they still understood the fundamental truth. Human bodies are furnaces, and furnaces work better when clustered together. A single person generates roughly 100 watts of heat at rest, the equivalent of a bright light bulb. Place 4 people in a sealed curtained bed, and you've created 400 watts of continuous heating that operates all night without consuming any fuel. This heat had nowhere to escape within the enclosed bed fortress, so it accumulated and sustained temperatures that would have been impossible for any individual to achieve alone. Medieval beds were built for this reality. The standard bed was large enough for multiple occupants, typically 6 to 8 feet wide. Servants often slept on truckle beds, low frames that rolled under the master bed during the day, or on pallets, placed directly on the floor in the same chamber. Everyone contributed to the shared heat budget of the room. Children were especially valuable in this system. Their small bodies generated heat proportional to their size, but required less space, creating an efficient heat-to-space ratio. Multiple generations sleeping together wasn't just family tradition, it was thermal optimization. Grandparents gained warmth, children gained warmth, and the heat loss that would have killed individuals became negligible in a properly managed group. The social dynamics evolved to support this necessity. People wore linen undergarments to bed, both for modesty and to create a barrier that allowed close sleeping without direct skin contact. Sleeping positions and arrangements became as codified as any other survival technique. The weakest members, often the elderly or sick, slept in the center, where they would receive heat from all sides. This system required no technology, no fuel, no expensive materials. It required only the recognition that in winter survival, community wasn't just emotional support, it was the difference between life and death. Medieval people didn't tolerate communal sleeping despite the inconvenience. They perfected it because it worked. While most people focus on blankets and covers, medieval sleepers knew the real enemy attacked from below. Cold stone floors and frozen ground beneath beds could drain body heat faster than any amount of covering could replace it. Their solution turned the simplest agricultural waste into sophisticated insulation technology. The medieval mattress was a canvas or linen sack called a tick, stuffed with whatever materials could trap air and block heat transfer. For most families, this meant straw, the hollow stalks left after grain harvest. The wealthy might afford wool or feathers, but straw was the foundation that made winter sleep survivable for millions. Straw possessed thermal properties that rival modern camping. Gear. Each hollow stalk contained trapped air, and thousands of stalks created a matrix of tiny insulation chambers. This prevented the sleeper's body heat from conducting directly into the cold bed frame and the frigid air beneath. The principle is identical to modern foam sleeping pads. Air pockets block heat transfer. The tick itself was crucial engineering. Too loose, and the straw would compress under body weight, eliminating the air gaps that provided insulation. Too tight, and the straw couldn't move and adjust to body contours, creating pressure points where cold could penetrate. Medieval families learned to stuff their mattresses to precise density through generations of trial and survival. Fresh straw worked best because it retained more air and structural integrity. Families would restuff mattresses seasonally, often adding aromatic herbs like lavender or rosemary that served dual purposes. The scents helped mask odors, while the oils provided mild antimicrobial properties that kept the sleeping surface healthier through long winter months. The mattress sat on rope webbing or wooden slats that elevated it above the bed frame, creating an additional insulating air gap. This prevented thermal bridging, the direct transfer of heat from the mattress through solid materials to the cold room below. Every element was designed to build layers of protection against the upward flowing cold. Even poor families who slept on simple pallets understood this principle. They would spread rushes, dried grasses, or straw directly on the floor, creating an insulating barrier between their bodies and the stone or earth that could kill them through heat loss. The materials were free, renewable, and effective enough to mean the difference between surviving winter and freezing to death in sleep. Medieval people engineered their beds from the ground up, literally. The foundation wasn't comfort, it was thermal protection that kept heat where it belonged and blocked cold from where it could kill. The bed fortress was built, the community assembled, the foundation insulated. But medieval sleepers faced one final challenge that could destroy everything: the shock of entering a freezing bed that would steal precious body heat in the first crucial minutes before their thermal system could take effect. Their solution combined the superior insulating properties of wool with a simple but ingenious preheating technique that eliminated the cold shock entirely. Medieval people never slept naked. They wore their linen undergarments, a shift for women, a smock for men, as a base layer that wickeded moisture away from skin while providing an initial barrier against cold. Over this came wool blankets, not the cotton or synthetic materials we use today, but genuine wool that possessed thermal properties our ancestors understood better than we do. Wool was medieval winter's secret weapon. Its crimped fibers naturally trap air in countless tiny pockets, creating insulation that works even when damp, a crucial advantage in rooms where breath condensation and moisture were constant threats. Unlike cotton, which loses all insulating value when wet, wool maintains its thermal protection. Unlike our modern synthetics, it breathes naturally while retaining heat, preventing the overheating and cooling cycles that can wake sleepers and waste precious warmth. The wool blankets were layered strategically, with lighter weaves against the body and heavier, tighter weaves as outer layers. This created a graduated insulation system, where air could be trapped in multiple chambers, while moisture could still escape upward. Wealthy families might have blankets lined with fur, but properly prepared wool provided thermal protection that kept even peasant families alive through the harshest winters. But all this insulation was worthless if entering the bed meant losing crucial body heat to freezing sheets and mattresses. Medieval sleepers deployed a weapon that eliminated this threat: the bed warmer. This device was elegantly simple: a metal pan, usually brass or copper, with a tight-fitting lid and a long wooden handle. Before sleep, it would be filled with hot coals or embers from the banked fire, sealed shut, and passed systematically between the sheets. The metal conducted heat efficiently while the lid contained the fire safely, warming the entire bed surface without risk of burns or fires. For families who couldn't afford metal bed warmers, heated stones or bricks wrapped in cloth served the same function. These were placed at the foot of the bed where they would radiate heat upward through the sleeping space all night. Some families heated these stones directly in the fire, then wrapped them in multiple layers of wool for controlled, long-lasting warmth. The preheating process was timed precisely with the nightly routine. While the bed warmer circulated through the sheets, family members would dress in their sleep layers near the dying fire, building body heat they would carry into the prepared bed. Entry into the sleeping space was swift and coordinated. No one lingered in the frigid bedroom once the thermal sanctuary was ready. This system worked because it addressed every aspect of heat loss simultaneously. The wool trapped body heat, the pre-warming eliminated cold shock, the layers created insulation gradients, and the waterproof linen-based layer managed moisture. Combined with the sealed bed fortress and shared body heat, it created a complete thermal environment that could sustain life through winter nights that regularly killed the unprepared. Medieval people didn't simply endure freezing nights, they engineered them into survival victories, using materials and techniques that required no fuel, no technology, and no resources beyond what intelligent preparation could provide. Their beds weren't places of comfort. They were precisely designed life support systems that turned winter's greatest threat into a battle they could win. These techniques weren't born from hardship. They were born from wisdom. Medieval people understood something we've forgotten in our rush toward technological solutions. True warmth doesn't come from heating everything around you. It comes from creating precise islands of thermal protection, exactly where you need them most. They didn't waste energy battling the cold throughout an entire house. They concentrated their resources, their body heat, their materials, their engineering intelligence, into spaces just large enough for survival. The bed fortress, the communal heat source, the insulation barriers, the pre-warming systems. Each element targeted heat loss at its source and eliminated it with surgical precision. We heat 3,000 cubic feet of space to keep one person comfortable for 8 hours. They heated 30 cubic feet and achieved the same result using nothing but wool, straw, and human bodies. The efficiency isn't just impressive, it's revolutionary. Their methods required no external fuel once the bed was warmed, no electricity, no gas, no oil. The system was completely renewable, powered by the heat humans generate simply by being alive. It was sustainable in ways our modern heating will never be, because it worked with human biology instead of trying to overpower natural law through brute force energy consumption. But perhaps most importantly, these techniques created resilience. Medieval people who mastered winter sleep survival could maintain warmth under conditions that would kill us within hours. Power grids could fail, fuel supplies could be cut off, heating systems could break down, and they would simply adjust their wool layers and gather closer together. Their comfort didn't depend on infrastructure they couldn't control. In our age of rising energy costs and uncertain supply chains, these forgotten methods offer more than historical curiosity. They offer alternatives. The thermal principles that kept medieval families alive haven't changed. Wool still traps air better than synthetic materials. Shared body heat still generates renewable warmth. Insulation barriers still prevent heat loss. Pre-warming still eliminates cold shock. You could implement every one of these techniques tonight in a modern bedroom and reduce your heating costs while improving your sleep warmth. The bed curtains, the wool layers, the heated stone at your feet, none of this requires medieval living. It requires medieval thinking. Medieval people didn't conquer winter through superior technology. They conquered it through superior understanding of how heat works, how bodies work, and how simple materials can be engineered into complex survival systems. They turned their beds into precision instruments for staying alive. We've traded that precision for convenience and called it progress. But on the coldest nights, when the power fails and the heating stops and modern comfort reveals itself as the fragile illusion it's always been, their techniques will still work. Because they were never about technology, they were about wisdom, and wisdom doesn't become obsolete. The medieval bed was never about furniture, it was about engineering thermal victory in a hostile world. Using nothing but intelligence, natural materials, and the recognition that survival belongs to those who understand the rules of the game they're playing. That game hasn't changed. Only our knowledge of how to win it has been forgotten. But it doesn't have to stay forgotten. Not anymore.